So good afternoon. My name is Christine Krieger, and I am the Professional Development Consultant for the Colorado State Library. So welcome to CSL in Session. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about CSL in Session and kind of how it works. But in the meantime, I wanted to let you guys know that there are two handouts that you won't necessarily need during today's session, but if you would like to go ahead and download them for your reference, they're on the left-hand side. Just click on the names of the files and you'll get a download button allowing you to download the PDFs. I normally show a couple of slides that talk about CSL in Session, but I think for the moment I'm going to leave the prison library nickname generator up. If you would like to find your first name and what month you were born, you can share your prison nickname in the chat if you so like, while I talk a little bit about what you can expect from today's session. You may be very familiar with webinars where you kind of kick back, eat your lunch, maybe check Facebook, and the presenter talks to you, but we like to shake things up a little bit with CSL in Session. So today we're going to share some information with you, obviously, about how you can partner with correctional facilities, but we also want to hear your feedback, your thoughts, and any questions that you may have. So the primary way that you're going to participate today is through the chat. For those of you new to web conferencing systems, in the chat box, lower left-hand corner, you can see some people are introducing themselves. Just type in your name, your question, and it'll automatically be sent to all of us. That way we can address your questions or your comments as we go through. If you are having any tech issues, number one, we are recording today's session. The recording will be available on the CSL in Session website probably by around, maybe in about an hour or so after the session. I'll be sharing the URL for the CSL in Session website at the end of today's session so you can access that archive. Also, you can get a hold of me during the session, upper left-hand corner, way at the top where it says Colorado State Library. That's me. If you hover your mouse over that, it will let you send me a private message and I can try to work with you on audio issues. So I've seen a couple people have introduced themselves with their prison nickname. That's kind of fun. The prison nickname generator is one of the handouts that we have available for you, so you can break it out at cocktail parties and such. But without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Erin Boyington and Teresa Allen, who both work with me at the Colorado State Library in our Institutional Library Development Department. And I'm going to let them continue introducing themselves.
Hello and welcome. This is the goal of our CSL in Session today is just to get ideas in your minds about serving the incarcerated in your library. So a few of the things we're going to cover today: the correctional environment, what you can expect, reasons and ways that you can partner with libraries and correctional facilities, concerns and obstacles you might also face, and the rewards of partnering, which I believe are many. My name is Erin Boyington, and I am the Adult Institution Senior Consultant, one of them, for the Colorado State Library. I work with incarcerated adults throughout the state, and before coming to CSL, I was the library manager for the Sterling Correctional Facility Libraries in Sterling, Colorado. You may hear me use the word CDOC, and sorry for the acronym soup. That stands for Colorado Department of Corrections. And my co-presenter, Teresa, are you able to? Well, sorry, my co-presenter is Teresa Allen. She is the Youth Institutions Consultant for Institutional Library Development, and she does the same thing as me, but for youth populations. Before she came to the Colorado State Library, she was a school librarian, and before that taught middle school language arts and high school English to teen felons. So a lot of similar behaviors to our incarcerated folks. Teresa, is your mic working now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think I hit the button. How embarrassing. So thanks for taking care of my introduction, Erin. Our experience is with state-operated correctional facilities, but many of the things we talk about today can be applied to other secure settings like city and county jails or even residential treatment centers in your area. So now we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. Christine is going to bring up a tool for you to mark your location on a map below. And we'd also like you to type into chat what type of library you work in, please.
So in order to use the little tool that we have for you, hopefully you can see the drawing tools that appeared on the screen. Towards the left-hand side, there's a black bar with different images. If you hover over the second one down, it says marker, and you can just click on it, and then you can either click on the Colorado map or on the US map and let us know where you are from. So I'm actually from Adams County in Colorado. Whoops, and my dot didn't go where I wanted it to. I'll put another dot. There we go. It looks like we have several folks here from public libraries. Denise from Pueblo. Seeing some more dots appear. Excellent.
One or two on the East Coast, it looks like.
Welcome. It's kind of fun to see who sort of uncovers CSL in session and where you all are from.
And in the chat, I'm seeing mostly folks from public library, which is kind of what we expected. I see Ben is a GED tutor in youth service facilities, so
Nice.
glad to have you here, Ben.
Pamela from Maryland. Yeah, the marker takes a little bit of getting used to, and the map is kind of small, but you know, we get the point across. Hopefully.
Okay, well, I'm going to go on to our presentation right now. And again, with the chat, we just want you to type in the words that come to your mind when you think of prison. What does that mean to you? Cage? Scary? Yeah. Reform? Drear? Good word. Isolation and lack of freedom, crime, behind the wall. Isolated, lonely, bored. Excellent. I'm glad you pointed that out, Justine. Cooped. Reentry, yay! One of our good words. And rehabilitation. So another word that I would say comes up is stress. Prison is extremely stressful. And so I'm just going to do a bit of Corrections 101. The terms jail and prison are often used interchangeably, but they actually mean different things depending on what state you're in. So just be aware that each type of institution has a different kind of government oversight. It might be county, it might be state, and it might be federal. And it may also have very different security requirements and population profiles. You may also have private prisons near you, and those are usually contractors with whatever government entity. For today's session, we're going to use the term facility to refer to all of these types of places that incarcerate people. So chances are at your library that you've already met people who are recently released, and some on parole as well. Not everyone who's convicted and released goes on to be under supervision and on parole, but many remain under some type of supervision after their release. I would say that a primary problem of being incarcerated, from the offender's standpoint at least, is just being really, really bored. There are very few chances to improve as a person, to learn or to grow when you are stuck behind bars, cooped up. And this is where our libraries come in. So you may have an image of what a library in a correctional facility looks like, and probably from the movies if you don't have experience in a correctional facility. This is the Shawshank Redemption Library, which some of you may recognize. And the movies get some details right, but each facility is as different from one another as one library is different from another. You just can't make assumptions. To illustrate that, I have a beautiful picture of the Youthful Offender Services Library in Pueblo, Colorado. This is the newest constructed library in CDOC, the Colorado Department of Corrections. Colorado's correctional libraries have the benefit of getting budgets for operations costs and for materials, which means that they get new stuff as well as donated stuff. Our libraries can be the most welcoming place in the entire facility. I've had patrons tell me that they came to the library and come to the library because it's the only place where they can feel normal. And it's often a peaceful haven in a place that's very stressful and often even boring by turns. So staffing varies state by state, just like the types of services that are available. But Colorado's state prisons mostly employ paraprofessionals to do the work in their libraries. There are only 4 professional librarian positions in CDOC statewide, and they all manage multiple libraries. So, as you probably know, if your library employs parapros, they have a wide range of experience and training that they bring to the job. They're also incredibly busy. Picture your day-to-day library tasks and now add on institutional tasks that come with working in a prison. So this might mean what we call other duties as assigned, which might mean sandwiches in the kitchen during the lockdown that you're sitting there making them, or searching shelves for contraband. And supervising offenders is a really big part of this job.
All right, so you might be wondering why we're asking you to create partnerships with these facilities. I mean, you've already got a lot to do, right? And these are criminals. Why should you spend your time and energy helping them? Well, we're guessing that if you're here, you're already part of the choir and we don't need to preach to you, but you might need to explain to other people why we should support the incarcerated. And one reason why is that 95 to 97% of those who are currently incarcerated will be released. Most people in prison have less than 2-year sentences. And so these are your future patrons and neighbors, and we want them to be the best citizens they can be. The small percentage who will not get out also need our support too. In fact, my supervisor, Diane Walden, has a quote that I'd like to read. She says that the need for library services doesn't end because a gate slams behind someone. They didn't stop being a county resident. Libraries should serve youth and adults in jail for the exact same reasons that they serve every other citizen in their service area. If anything, going to jail might indicate a higher need for community services, of which the library is only one, unquote. And so you've probably heard that our country locks up a lot of people, and most are from populations that are already disadvantaged. In Colorado, approximately 800 men and women are released monthly from prison, with a majority returning to the Denver metro area. Of these 800, 150 of them release into homelessness. Often they lack significant family support or personal resources to provide for their basic needs. Many have struggled with troubled or abusive childhoods, poor education, and of course, mental health or substance abuse issues. The majority are economically disadvantaged upon release. They yearn for self-sufficiency and self-respect while endeavoring to live as productive citizens. And so that leads to another big reason to support those who are currently incarcerated, and it almost always comes down to money. In 2016, almost 23,000 men and women were incarcerated in Colorado alone. That's just the state correctional facilities, not including jails in counties or cities. And for each person, it's an average cost of close to $36,000 per person per year. So that's a lot of zeros, right? And this calculation doesn't even include the direct financial impact on families of offenders and also the intergenerational damage inflicted by mass incarceration. And I also need to mention that over half of those who are released from incarceration recidivate or return back to prison within 5 years, again, costing more taxpayer dollars. So if offenders become less likely to recidivate, there'll be less of a financial burden on society. And so how do we reduce recidivism? Well, let's try to improve their chances for successful reentry into their communities.
So this word reentry, which somebody has already brought up in the chat, is one that you will hear a lot when you're talking about this population. And the simplest definition is that they're just people who are returning to the community from jail or from prison. And I would like to quote the National Crime Prevention Council, which says, reentry specifically involves using programs that promote the effective reintegration of ex-offenders into communities. Um, and to speak to that, they're very likely to struggle when they're trying to reenter. We have this image here of a shuttle reentering at the atmosphere from orbit, and I think it's a really apt image to think of when you're um, picturing an offender returning to the community. Both experiences can be really jarring and fearful and full of danger. And unlike astronauts, ex-offenders might not actually get much help or training before they're just kind of launched into the void, as it were. Okay, so one thing we do want to ask and get your feedback on is, what might people need help with when they get out of prison? And please just type in anything that you can think of. And you can type into the chat in the center of the screen as well as the regular chat window. So I'm seeing housing, finding work,
Technology, food.
legal and entertainment. Yeah. Oh, legal entertainment. Yes, that too. Phone,
Yeah.
computers. Yeah.
Dina, I'm curious what you mean by community. And Cecilia, the same thing, community assistance, transportation. Places to relax.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and Robin had mentioned
Mental
emotional and
health.
social outlets as well.
I see that in the middle now. Melanie mentioned mental health care. Erin, we're done. They've already covered everything.
I think so. Yeah, we knew we were preaching to the choir.
Friendly faces who don't judge. Oh, I see Cecilia and Dina answered support and resource links in the community. Excellent.
Yeah, Sean, that's right. Shortest webinar ever.
Okay, well, you guys did already anticipate a lot of the needs that ex-offenders have upon re-entering their communities. I don't think anybody mentioned identification, and as we know, that's essential for adulting to be able to apply for jobs or just function in society. And if you've been locked up for a long time, it might be a problem to obtain a state-issued identification. Housing, as we in the Denver metro area know, it's really hard to find affordable housing even without a criminal background. Family, not everyone gets visited in prison, and if you're a former offender, you might have to work hard to reestablish or repair connections with your family members. And then lots of you mentioned work. If you have a felony record, meaningful, well-paid jobs are especially challenging to find. And ex-offenders are more likely to end up in labor-intensive, blue-collar jobs, if they can even find a job at all. And transportation. You don't make a lot of money in prison, so do you even have money to buy a car if you need one? If not, can you afford public transportation? Can you even read a bus schedule? Food, can you afford it? Do you know how to eat in a healthy way so you stay so you don't get sick? Clothing, even if you have clothing, do you have a place to launder it so that you're not embarrassed to apply for jobs or to meet with your family members? Healthcare, many offenders need prescriptions upon release. If that's the case for you, you need to find and get to a healthcare practitioner And then you need to fill and pay for your prescriptions, which may or may not be in the same location as your healthcare practitioner. So that comes back to transportation. So if you are in a public library, these are the same kinds of problems that many of your patrons are facing, right? But that's not all. Just to complicate this slide, I'm adding money at the top. If you've been locked up, you may not have a bank account when you get out. So if you're lucky enough to get a new job, perhaps your employer offers only direct deposit of your paychecks. If you don't have a checking account, how do you make court mandated payments or restitution? Communication. Smartphones are not allowed in correctional facilities. So if you've been locked up for 8 years, you may not have a lot of familiarity with smartphone technology if a flip phone was cutting edge technology at the time you became incarcerated. Can you even afford a phone or qualify for a plan? In the upper right-hand corner, I added education. We all know it's harder to get a good job if you don't have a diploma or GED. And if you want to go on and get a college education, do you have study skills to improve? And then in the lower corner, I added a computer. Incarcerated folks generally do not have access to the internet, and they often lack basic keyboarding or mouse skills. So now imagine that you need to fill out online applications for jobs or for government assistance. Do you have access to a computer? Even setting up an email account can be excruciating the first time, and then managing passwords is a whole other skill on top of that. In the lower left corner, I added a clock for time management. If you are under parole, maybe you have a behavioral plan requiring anger management classes. Then imagine that your parole officer suddenly requests a random urinalysis. How do you get there and to your job and to your visitation appointments on time, especially if you don't have your own transportation? And I also want to add recreation under this. Do you have positive ways to fill your time so you don't get in trouble again, and positive ways to burn off stress, which is the next icon I've added at the bottom. Um, Mental health problems and bad behaviors resulting from stress can cause you to get in trouble again and also lead to recidivism. So then there's always the ever watchful eye of officers and law enforcement. So this intentionally messy slide shows that reentry is overwhelming and especially difficult in the first 2 weeks. You can see why we compare it reentry to a spaceship coming back into the atmosphere. So people incarcerated really cannot be successful re-entering society if they wait until the day or the week or the month before they get out to figure out how to do all of these things. So we like to say that re-entry begins on day 1 of incarceration, so offenders have time to learn the skills they need for re-entry. And that's why we need your help. We want you to consider using your unique library skills and resources to support offenders while they are incarcerated.
And to that end, we've created the 3 tiers of service, which is one of the handouts you have. And I'm just going to talk briefly about what we put on there and why we put it on there. So I say 3 levels of awesome because they're not grouped in order of how great your library is if you provide this service. They're grouped in levels of complexity and commitment that would be required of your library to provide these services. Um, the tiers don't indicate the value. Basically, if you're doing something at the first tier, you can influence someone's life for the better just as much as if you were at the 3rd tier of services. So tier 1, first of all, this is probably some of the simplest. You might already be doing this in your library, and we'll talk about that a little bit later and ask you guys for your input. Provide in-facility library card signups to those who are releasing soon. If you are just being released and trying to get your life together and you already have that card in your back pocket, you're much more likely to go there as your first stop and use the resources already available. The second one is institute a fine forgiveness program. to encourage future library use. Fine forgiveness programs are already happening nationwide, and this population that we serve is especially in need of that because they may already be paying restitution and not have extra money to pay off a library fine. And if they have a library fine, are they going to come in? You could also provide materials through interlibrary loan. In Colorado, our CDOC libraries do borrow from public libraries, so you may see their names pop up, and you have the opportunity to send resources that kind of stretch what the library already holds. This is a huge benefit, and it's one of those privileges that I know that our patrons value very highly. So tier 2, you could provide programming using library staff and guest speakers that you already have. No need for extra things. Your library staff already do things like provide early literacy training for parents. Many people who are in prison are parents and still have that task and that need and desire to parent from prison. So that is one of the ways that your library can help. Guest speakers, if you have an author coming to your area, would they be willing to stop for an hour in a correctional facility? Not everyone is comfortable with that, but some authors are really game. And in Denver, we've had some great authors come and share at our facilities, and then in other areas statewide too. And you could also regularly deliver materials to patrons within a correctional facility. So kind of like interlibrary loan, except for it's probably your staff actually helping to physically get it there. Tier 3, this is the highest level of complexity. If you're doing this, it's super awesome. This is a lot of commitment. Um, so run and equip a branch inside of a facility. The Arapahoe Library District is one example of somebody who already does this. They actually have a contract with the sheriff's office that they have to negotiate and review regularly, and they provide services inside of a local jail. And I know that their services are pretty awesome. And without it, I can't imagine what kinds of entertainment would be available or information would be available to their patrons. And finally, provide ongoing video visiting for families. Our example of this is Brooklyn Public Library, although they've partnered with other library districts in their area, and their program is called Tell a Story. Basically, families can go to their local library and their family member who's incarcerated sits at their facility and they can kind of Skype and talk and have a chance to connect without having to go through the stress and travel of actually going to the facility in person. So we'll be asking you to share a little bit more if your library is providing services, but for now, right now we want to do a poll and ask you what tier of service would you say your library is at? And if you don't currently provide services, zero judgment on that, but it's something that we're hoping that people will think more about as we get this message out. Okay, so I'm seeing a mix, and I'm going to wait a little bit and let everybody get a chance to vote. Awesome. So lots of opportunities, although I see some people actually are currently providing services at some level. So if you could type into the chat the things that your library is doing or the things you've heard of other libraries doing beyond what we've shared today. And we have a chat in the center of the screen as well if you want to type there. Either one works for us.
Yeah, Sean mentioned earlier that Tier 2 programming is, from the institution's point of view, is something that can be done in a volunteer capacity. So,
yeah, absolutely. Mail order library, including incarcerated individuals. Awesome.
So
Writing
Melanie
group?
mentions staff members that go to Denver Women's Correctional Facility to talk about public library services several times a year.
Consumer health. So yeah, you may get letters from people who are incarcerated asking for information or services. And we get questions from librarians who are like, can I answer this question? Should I answer? And our answer is always yes, absolutely. Um, you know, you may have to draw the line at some point with what you can actually do in the time and resources you have available, but they're very appreciative of help from librarians.
Sean followed up by saying that their volunteers facilitate a writing group in the local prison, which is excellent.
Those are very important. The opportunity to be creative and to learn new skills or exercise skills is incredibly helpful. I see
Cecilia's
Justine
mentioning,
mentioned.
I think, Jefferson County Public Libraries going to county and correctional facilities in the federal prison, doing a writing workshop.
Great. I see Justine is talking about donations. Donations are
Yes.
always welcome. Teresa manages the ones that we get for Colorado.
We prefer some donations over others, absolutely, but oh, and Sean also mentioned providing library cards to those who are about to be released, which is great. And just over in the chat box, Tammy from Denver Public is reference questions. And
Bookmobile.
oh,
If you
you've
have an
had a
outreach
lot of reference
department
questions,
already.
it sounds like. I'm sorry for talking over you, Erin.
Oh, no problem. Bookmobile, yeah, your outreach department may already be doing great things with facilities.
All right, well, feel free to keep typing in the chat box. I think we'll proceed to the next slide. All right, so you might already have a lot of obstacles and concerns in mind, but I think they can be reduced to three broad categories. And the first one I'm representing with the bars and lock icon. This represents gatekeepers that you might face even before getting in the doors to help the incarcerated. I mean, prison's designed for preventing people from getting out rather than freely letting people in. So the best advice I can give you is to identify a nearby facility and find an inside point of contact who will advocate to get you in and to help you navigate possible bureaucratic red tape. Usually on the internet, you can find the main switchboard number for a facility. So when you call, ask to be transferred to the library or education department. We think those are the people who will be most likely to help you get in. Then bear in mind that those folks are busy, so initial contact may not be enough. It might take some time and patience to earn their trust, and it might take many follow-up calls or emails so they know you're not some salesperson or a weirdo who just wants to visit prison for fun. Another obstacle you might face is security, which I'm using a key to represent. Security is the absolute top concern in correctional facilities. You will likely need advance permission to enter the building. You might even have to provide your driver's license number for a background check. Even if you have a criminal record, that's not necessarily going to prevent you from visiting and providing resources or services in a facility library. You will need prior approval for any materials you want to bring in. And you'll be restricted from bringing in certain items like cell phones. You might also be expected to dress in a particular way, and I'm thinking of actually all of our state-operated facilities do not allow staff to wear jeans. So as a visitor, I would try to adhere to that dress code too. When you approach a facility, sometimes you might have to push a button at the front door and then try to communicate with a typically incomprehensible voice through an intercom in order to request entry. And then, of course, you would expect fences and razor wire and gates and metal detectors, but not always, depending on the security level of a facility you're trying to enter. And then finally, one big concern you probably have is your own personal protection, which I'm using the umbrella to represent. Um, you might need to take special care and have heightened awareness of your surroundings in a correctional facility, but it's really not as scary as you might have seen on television or in movies. Offenders typically will not be aggressive towards you, but they will be very curious about you. Anything new in their boring environment is very interesting to them. But rest assured that trained staff will keep you safe, and if this is going to be a long-term engagement, you might have an opportunity to attend training for volunteers. And now I'll turn it over to Erin to talk about the rewards.
So I love working for this population because the rewards are really the interactions that we get. Just some of my own personal experiences with working at Sterling. This artwork is done by an offender who was incarcerated there named Mr. Kevin Neckville, shown with his permission. This was created for an Asian American Heritage Month passive program, and it was very simple. We just let offenders color paper lanterns, which we then put together and hung in the library. And Mr. Neckville colored several of them, all with this incredible level of detail. The inset picture is actually one that he did as well. And he came in one day and he's all bleary-eyed and he's like, well, I stayed up all night to do this. And so I kind of suggested he might consider sleeping, but you can tell that it was something that sparked something in him. And I would have to say he wasn't the only one who was able to create something beautiful because of the library program. Those who are incarcerated in institutions might be the most grateful patrons that you can ever hope to meet. I would say that volunteers who bring programs are regularly impressed by the intense interest and creativity that they see in the patrons. And you might find that serving them is your new passion. A few more pictures. Um, so on the left-hand side of the screen is a picture of a teacher at the Sterling Correctional Facility, Renee Kubitz, on the far left. And in the center is Matthew Labonte, and then that's me on the right. And thanks to a nonprofit in the Denver area called Pop Culture Classroom, my library got this incredible program called Lead with Comics. And LEAD stands for Literacy Education in Adult Detention. And this is a partnership that really worked because we were both committed to making it happen and followed through on everything that we wanted to do and kind of had to work through some obstacles to get it to happen. So during LEAD, our students could learn to draw and write their own comic book. And each week they read a graphic novel, and the classroom sets were actually purchased for us by Pop Culture Classroom. Um, Mr. Labonte is holding a comic collection that was published by PCC, and it includes one that he actually wrote and illustrated a poem that he wrote, which it was one of my favorites of the ones that had been created during our class. And the state library even sent a copy home to his dad. So you can see how these programs can help them connect to people at home, even when that's not the first purpose of the program. On the right is a picture of the 2017 Eisner Grant-funded lecture at Sterling Correctional Facility. The American Library Association and the Eisner Foundation have a grant that our library won, and we got more materials to use in LEAD and more materials for our libraries specifically connected to graphic novels. A professor from CU Boulder, Dr. William Cuskin, volunteered his own time to give the lecture. And this is the first group of attendees. There were several discussion groups. We had a great set of discussions about art, literature, and obviously superheroes, as you can see from the Batman logo. Dr. Cuskin told me at the end that the level of conversation he experienced was comparable to what he's seen in graduate level seminars. So you will be amazed at the range of experience and interest that these patrons will bring to you. And so another question for you guys, if you would type in the chat box, what steps or services would you like to start at your library? If you could do anything you wanted, I'd love to hear from you. I see some people typing. Classes to show database resources. Absolutely. More
Uh,
staff members. Does that mean library staff members? Ah, okay.
well, Denise is
Absolutely.
mentioning recruiting felons to become library volunteers.
Yeah, we have our clerks at the Colorado facilities actually work in the libraries, so they come out knowing quite a bit about the basics of running a library. A class for the newly released and an invitation for drop-ins.
I think Denver Public
Card
Library,
signups.
the
Awesome.
central branch, did something similar to that for women, women who were formerly incarcerated.
Yeah, I love the library card program, and I saw someone from Washington State. I know that one of the state library there has actually started a program in coordination with my hometown, Spokane, which makes me so proud.
Yeah, both Justine and Tammy are mentioning library card signups. And keep those
Parenting classes.
donations coming, Justine. Those are great.
Parenting classes and literacy, absolutely.
hmm And classes to show database resources.
Reading group, yeah. Jails are especially neat because sometimes you never know how long somebody's going to be in jail for. It might be that they're just there overnight, but they might also be there for several months or even years. And sometimes they are convicted, so they have sentences that they're serving, and they just are in the jail because they have a court date or something similar, or they're visiting, they need to go to the hospital, so they're staying at the jail for the time being.
Eric has got a
Staff,
dream of a comprehensive program to help all prison units, depending on the needs of the guests.
yeah,
Yeah, customized services would be nice.
absolutely. And Melanie, to your point, staff members who don't know how to interact well with ex-offenders, that's a really good point. Um, you might not even know if they're an ex-offender. Some may have facial tattoos, depending on who they are, but some are just regular looking people that you would never guess that they had just been released. So I think, um, does anybody have any input on a ways to interact with ex-offenders in the library?
Yes, while people are responding to that, it's in the little chat on the left. FCPL mentions going to visit prisoners before they're released to let them know what the library offers, and then give them their library card at the time. So that's a fantastic suggestion.
Yep. And Sean, yeah, treat them like anybody else, just like a regular library patron.
All right, well, feel free to keep chatting in the lower left. Oh, we just lost Ben's comment. We'll catch it later. All right, do you have any questions that we haven't addressed?
Exchanging contact info. Awesome. How often going to do library card signups? It's a good question. Teresa, do you have any?
It's probably going to depend on the site you're visiting and their needs, and then also the resources you have. So it's kind of a cop-out, but the answer is it depends.
Probation officers. It again, another one where it depends. There's a huge amount of variety in what you'll find with knowledge of what staff know who work with offenders and ex-offenders. And library outreach really makes a big difference. I know that Denver Public Library actually has a really good relationship with the nearest parole office, and that office will actually send people straight to the library when they get out.
Tammy's asking about what kinds of library services are currently offered by facilities. In Colorado, which is all we can really speak to, I think the adult facilities operate on a public library model, so they try to offer as much as possible the same types of services as public library patrons would get, of course, with the restrictions on internet access. I work mostly with juvenile correctional facilities, and we operate more on a school library model, also with the same limitations to internet access. Erin, would you have anything to add to that, to library services offered in facilities?
Yeah, Colorado has great libraries, and not every state has libraries in its state prisons. Not every state funds their libraries, even if they have one. They may not even have trained staff available. So you're going to find a huge variety. And whenever you don't see a library, their needs are going to be much, much greater. And when you do see a library, it's great. It's another great opportunity to partner.
And Tammy's asking if there are different levels of service in men's versus women's facilities. And in Colorado, it's the same, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say the levels of service actually tend to vary less by gender and more by custody level.
Mm-hmm.
And custody level is just one of those words, how much security you need. There are some people who are locked up most of the day, and there are some people who have facilities that don't even have a fence around them. And usually that depends on um, their institutional behavior, and sometimes the length of sentence determines that as well. And I see
And just,
Tammy's comment.
yeah, did that answer your question then, Tammy, about the difference between men's and women's services? Great. All
I
right.
would oh, sorry, just to add to that, women tend to have children, more children than the male offenders, and sometimes uh, less support, less money coming in when they're incarcerated.
Yeah, so if you still have questions or if one occurs to you later, this is our contact information, so please note that. Underneath our email addresses is the link to our institutional library development website. We have two other members of our team who are actually more experienced and even more amazing than Erin and me. Over to the right, I'd like to direct your attention to the book cover for Library Services to the Incarcerated, which was co-written by Erica McCrae, who is a former member of Institutional Library Development, but it's just a very readable and detailed book on serving those who are incarcerated, and that one is for a more of a jail focus too. The second bullet from the bottom is a link to Remerge, which is a website designed specifically for those who are formerly incarcerated, and it addresses those reentry needs that I mentioned on that slide with all of the black and white icons. but it was designed by Carol Peoples and Steve Mersuli, who is a former offender. And so they really know what they're talking about on the Remerge website. It is definitely a Colorado focus with specific Colorado resources, but even if you're from another state, it's worthwhile to look at the Remerge website and see what they have to offer or what they're recommending to the formerly incarcerated. And then our final link is to the Brooklyn Public Library's Telestory program that Erin mentioned, and her Tier 3 level of service, and it's just a great introduction to how they do things. Anything else you want to add, Erin?
No, I would say I'm very, very happy to answer questions, so please don't hesitate to contact me by my
All
email
right.
address there.
Well, thanks everybody for sticking with us, and we'll turn it back to Christine for a brief wrap-up.
So I want to extend a thank you to both Erin and Teresa for this session. Once again, we did record today's session, so it'll be available on the CSL session website. You could just Google CSL in session. I also put the link in the chat earlier. So you can access the archive and pass it on to other people that you think might be interested. I also, on this slide, there is a link to a survey. It's actually clickable. You can click right on it. And we would love to hear what you thought about today's session. We are always trying to make things better and serve the needs of library staff throughout Colorado. So feel free to let us know what you thought about today's session. And I just wanted to let you guys know that next month's CSL in session is going to be on Thursday, April 12th, and my mind just exploded a little bit that next month is going to be April, at noon Colorado time, where we have Mandy Miller from the Front Range Community College is going to lead a discussion on being a solo librarian. And I think a lot of the information she's going to share obviously applicable to library staff who work on their own, but also maybe for small libraries or even small departments, or maybe you're a department of 1 or 2. So that will happen on Thursday, April 2nd. Also, if any of you happen to need a certificate for today's session, I am typing my email. Oh, no, that's not it. I will type in just a second my email into the chat, and you can just click on that, send me an email, and I will make sure that you get a certificate for today. And once again, I want to thank our presenters and thank all of you for joining us for today's session and sharing all of your thoughts and questions and ideas. I hope everybody has a really great afternoon.